Um, and welcome and happy spring and happy solstice to everyone.
Mhm.
And now it's time to do some of our breakout rooms. So, no, I'm sorry, we did breakout rooms. Now we're sorry. Okay, I'm with you. So we have a fabulous group, wide-ranging group of updates. So let's get started. So first, we'll start with the affinity groups that are have grown out of the BPRG. I want to be clear that the BPRG doesn't monitor what these groups are doing. We just are a place for people to find each other to form these groups. And they're all doing great and very different kinds of projects. So the first one I'd like to call on Andrew Essington to tell us about the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy using CAP.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I am a pediatric nurse in Boston, and I started actually the beginning of the month on the 1st. We had our first meeting of the second version of the ketamine affinity group. There was an existing group that was built by some early BPRG members, and the result of that was they brought a training through Phil Wilson's Institute to Boston, and a lot of them are now very busy in private practice. And so we had sort of our first meeting to reinvigorate some interest. So we welcome anyone who's currently practicing in mental health, anyone who is interested in being a patient or learning more about this therapy. We are hoping to build a big tent, and we have some clinicians from MGH who are interested in maybe building a private practice around ketamine, because MGH has an infusion center, which is an incredible program, but they're not really interested in the actual the psychedelic effect or the therapeutic effect. They're more into the pharmacokinetics. But I will put my email in the chat box. Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, April 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll also be sending out some minutes from the last meeting. And I love talking about ketamine. I think it has an incredible potential, both as the only legal psychedelic now and the sort of the potential to build an infrastructure for the things that are coming down through the pipeline. And I could not be more excited to hear Raquel speak today. So thank you very much. And we would love to have you at our next meeting.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thanks for resurrecting this group, because there's more and more demand for CAP. And as I learned in both my breakout rooms, how many people are talking about it. Probably it's a little skewed population today because of Raquel talking, but still, thank you, thank you. So next up, Elise Hoblitzel, please, to catch us up to date on the contemplative practices and psychedelics affinity group.
Thank you, Anne, and hello, everybody. So glad to be here. So yes, our contemplative practices and psychedelics group has been meeting monthly, and we will do so the next 2 months. April 2nd, we will have Dunya Muller, who is a cathartic breathwork practitioner, leading a practice with us, and then taking questions and sharing about her experience with this work, which can be quite psychedelic for some people in its outcomes, and profoundly healing for many. And then very exciting, in May, we have Chris Beishi coming to speak about his book, Diamonds, LSD in the Mind of the Universe. And the subtitle is Diamonds from Heaven. It's a remarkable book if you haven't read it. And I will also put my email in the chat if anyone wants to connect with this affinity group. We have many wonderful members, and would certainly welcome more folks who would like to join us for those 2 meetings and more. The summer will be quieter, and then we'll ramp back up again in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. Thanks for keeping that going and giving it new life. It's great. And then I'd like to call on Lance Linke for an update for the clinicians group for harm reduction and integration practices, please.
Afternoon, everyone. Yep, the clinicians group is as an eye toward harm reduction and integration. We're planning to meet next month, Sunday, April 24th at noon. I'll put my email in there. It's an opportunity to go over case studies, consultation, personal and professional experiences for clinicians around psychedelics. I'll put my information in there, and please contact me if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Lance. Then I have one to read. This is a newly forming group. Rebecca Slater has started this. It's called the Veterans Connection and Support Group. She gave us an update at the last meeting, and she's looking for veterans within the BPRG community to join forces to help other veterans gain access to information and/or gain access to resources for psychedelic therapy. If you're a veteran who would like to join the Affinity Group, please contact Rebecca Slater at re.slater, it's in the chat, 108@gmail.com. Great, thank you. And then the final is that Jim Miller is going to tell us about a new affinity group that he's helping to get started that we're very excited about. Jim is a relatively new member, but very enthusiastic member of the BPRG. He co-founded several companies, and he now directs clinical innovation at the Mass General Hospital. So he's very experienced in getting startups going, and we're seeing the BPRG sort of as a startup. We have such a big mailing list, and we're looking forward to seeing what magic Jim and other people who are interested can cook up for us. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. I don't know about magic, but to say the least, it's a complicated time, and we view this affinity group as slightly different than the others insofar as it really is a portal as well as an affinity group, a portal to listen to members and to hear people's thoughts, to get an opportunity to maybe share some ideas. And I think, at least for its inception, we envision it as from micro to macro. Micro in the sense that to whatever extent we can help people solve practical problems. I mean, we have so many diverse practices out there that the notion of everybody facing and inventing solutions for their practical issues seems not useful. So to whatever extent we can create a forum for people to share solutions with respect to their practices, issues regarding insurance, shared space, all the stuff that you have to face, if that can be reduced in a way that can be spread among people. On the other hand, on the sort of macro level, we are facing a tsunami of change with the MAPS approvals and other such things. And the hope is that there is some way to sort of solidify BPRG so that it can become a player and represent sort of the interests of providers in this coming, these coming regulatory changes and the environment. And I think about, unless there are active respondents and participants, the market, such as it is, always drives towards a default system. I was in the so-called innovation district. For those of you not in the Boston area, there was this vast acreage of land that was undeveloped and the Seaport area. And over the last several years, it's been developed into what is called the innovation district. The problem is there's nothing innovative about it. They squeezed in every space for a high rise that could be squeezed in. There was no innovation with respect to how to develop something, how to use different kinds of energy and resources. And so I think it's always the way that if there's not a reaction, if there are not parties that are involved in large parties, then we will face a default and market forces, insurance companies and the like. So to whatever extent we can build something of an infrastructure with BPRG so that the needs of providers in the future can be heard in some sort of cohesive way, that would be a real addition. And in the same vein, to whatever extent we can build revenue sources for BPRG. Right now, it depends on the significant efforts of very few people, and really to build revenue streams that might allow us to hire full-time staff or whatever, and build an infrastructure that would ensure its future and its success. So it really is a listening forum, just what people's ideas, their thoughts, and to whatever extent those ideas and thoughts are brought to the board or to the other members, everybody is welcome. So every 2 cents is welcome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. I hope that we'll get lots of enthusiastic response, because I do feel like we're at a nexus of what can we do with this wonderful energy of all these great members. So thank you, Jim. I also forgot to mention that Jim's going to be in the next cohort, the CIS CPTR cohort. So he'll get a good overview of what's going on from that experience. So let's move on now to other projects that are going on in our membership group. The first person I'd like to call on is Yvonne Bosson, who's a palliative care doctor at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And he's got a very exciting project. And he also was one of our original members back in July 2018. So thank you so much, Yvonne, for all you're doing in this field.
Thank you so much, Anne and Chipper and Cherry. It's good to see everybody. I wanted to so first, I'm sorry, there is some background, the kids behind, so maybe a little bit noisy. I apologize in advance. So the news I wanted to share with the group here is that our study of psilocybin-assisted therapy to address demoralization in patients who receive hospice care is now open for enrollment. So we have all the regulatory green lights, and I'm sorry, I didn't say where I worked, but I'm a palliative care physician at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And so this project is a partnership, a collaboration with a hospice organization in Massachusetts called Care Dimensions. I'll put the email, the website address in the chat. And so through this collaboration, we are now able to administer psilocybin-assisted therapy to patients who receive hospice care at Care Dimensions. And so it's an important note for you to know, like we would appreciate any referral, of course, and if you know people who receive care at Care Dimensions, we welcome any referral. Unfortunately, in some ways, it's not open to other to all patients. You know, it's really within this organization that we've opened for enrollment. Anyway, that's very exciting because it's a small feasibility study that's going to allow us to learn if we can recruit patients and what patients we are able to recruit, whether we are able to deliver psilocybin-assisted therapy to terminally ill patients, and whether that improves their existential distress. So we have like a great team composed of physicians, therapists, music therapists, nurses, researchers. And the second announcement that is related to that is that Care Dimensions is hiring a research associate, so a research assistant, whose role will be in big part related to this psilocybin study. So I'll put another link in the chat with more information about this position. And if you know anybody, please feel free to email. That would be greatly appreciated. So I'll just say thank you, because this community has been instrumental in getting us started and supported throughout the way. And it's really manifesting now in a very concrete way. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Yvonne. When do you hope to dose your first?
So we're starting the screening process this week, and so then it depends on how many patients are eligible, and you know then the prep sessions. So we have about 2 to 3 weeks before between the enrollment and the dosing. So, it could be as early as in 3 weeks, and it will really depend on recruitment and preparation.
Right. That's
Yeah.
great. And you are the first psilocybin assisted therapy project at Harvard since the old days, right?
Well, you tell me. You should know that, but I think in that field, yes, definitely. Yeah.
I don't think there are any others that are up and running yet. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so exciting. And I know there are a lot others, in the almost boiling here. So it's exciting. I think as a field, like to see everything emerging right now. And there is a lot of work to do research-wise. So hopefully we can recruit more and more patients and have study open for more patients in the future.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Yvonne, for that
Thank you.
update and all that you're doing, and good luck.
Thanks.
Great to hear when you really get started. Yvonne also works at Sunstone, which is a group down in the DC area, has been doing research down there. And Ron Miss, who also is involved as the CFO down there, wanted to give us a quick Sunstone update.
I will do just that once I unmute myself. And I've described what Sunstone Therapies does a couple of times, but I know that there are several people who are coming to this BPRG call for the first time. So let me just give a quick overview on Sunstone Therapies. And before I do that, my dog has decided right now to go out. The door's here. He's got his timing just down there. But Sunstone Therapies was formed to assist cancer patients with their emotional distress using psychedelic therapy. And the organization, it's a company actually, it's a for-benefit corporation, conducts research, and we finished our first FDA-approved study last year, and the results are not yet published, but will be soon. Yvonne was instrumental in that study, in a companion study that was conducted. Sunstone is kind of evolving, and we're at the stage now of raising more money through investor capital and donations to complete several more studies and build out additional centers. We built the first center in Rockville, Maryland, at the Aquilino Cancer Center, and is named the Bill Richards Center for Healing. Bill Richards he leads our therapist team. So it's a really exciting time for Sunstone, because I think like a rocket, you got that Saturn V stage that gets the rocket going, and then eventually it gets high enough that one falls off and the second stage gets going. I guess we're somewhere in the second, maybe the third stage. And I say that because the original team, which was all sort of working part-time to try to get this thing going, 3 of the founders have left their regular jobs to work full-time at Sunstone. And I thought I might be the first one to describe, open positions for hire in the space, but Yvonne has just described one at Harvard. Sunstone is looking to hire 2 people. So if I don't sound like an advertisement here, I'll describe what these positions are. They're both operating positions. So I guess if the title would be operations manager, and then a more junior position in the same lane. But we're looking for people who are experienced in the operational and administrative tasks, ideally in a medical practice. The more senior person might have 10 to 15 years of experience. Obviously the more junior person, less so. The positions are full-time, and they're in Rockville, Maryland, which is 20-minute drive from Washington, DC. So if anyone might be interested in that position, in either of those positions, or learning more, I'll put my email address in the chat box, and you can contact me. I'm happy to send job descriptions. You may know people who are in the Washington, DC area that are interested in this work. But Sunstone is, I already launched, as I said, and we're at the point now of starting to build the team with more full-time positions. So I'd welcome, speaking with anybody who might be interested, and then I'll put them in touch with the team in Washington, DC. So that's what's up with Sunstone. Good stuff. I'll put my email address in the chat box here for everybody.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yep.
So next, I'd like to ask David Esselman, who's been a strategic consultant in this field for a while, and he wanted to share an exciting project that he's been working on recently.
So I was actually, thank you, Anne. It's been more than recently. I think the last several months, actually, other people on this call have also contributed. A group out of a nonprofit organization called Brain Futures, which is available at brainfutures.org. Something that was me. At brainfutures.org, really took a comprehensive view of over 200 clinical studies across 7 compounds, ranging from psilocybin to mescaline this past year. And they just released a report this past weekend, just kind of looking at the base evidence across those 7 compounds. And I was fortunate enough to contribute to that, but just wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity for this community to sort of share it within the existing communities that you all have, because I feel like it's the first time we've got one comprehensive document across each of the 7 compounds to sort of say this is the policy that is available, and what works for what works in terms of a context of each of them. And so, as you are probably aware, there are conversations in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Hawaii and Utah, et cetera, that are all trying to pass legislation. So if you know groups that are either practitioners or payers or insurers or other sort of affinity groups that would be interested in this information, please share that with them. The link is to the report is in the chat below. There's also going to be several other papers that will come out this year. So if you're interested in the policy making aspect of this work, you can also reach out to me. I'll send my email around as well, because I think we're going to start to have a working group as well focused around that. So if you're interested in the policy piece nationally, we'd love to have your contribution as well. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, David. All right. So next, Franklin King, please. So Franklin is a psychiatrist at Mass General, Director of Education and Therapist Training at the new Center for the Neuroscience of Psychedelics, and he's going to give us an update around that work. Are you there? Hi, Franklin. Welcome.
Thanks. Nice to see everybody. Yeah, so there's a number of things going on at MGH. We've already heard a little bit about some aspects of what's going on with ketamine. What hasn't been mentioned is that actually on the inpatient psychiatry unit, there's some growing interest in doing a pilot of doing CAP for psychiatric inpatients. So that's one thing that my colleague Fernando Espy has been working on. The main thing that sort of always comes up, and I feel like the last time I was here and the last time before that, has been this psilocybin for depression study, which is being run by my colleague Sharman Ghaznavi. That's been about to happen for a really long time. I think Yvonne probably can speak to the sort of delays that seem to happen with these, but I'm going to be a co-therapist on that study, and that should be getting going soon. All the approvals are in place. There's, I think, 350 people sort of waiting to be screened once it formally gets going. And there's been a room that's sort of basically a living room constructed over in the Neuroimaging Center in the Charlestown Navy Yard to facilitate this. So that's happening. We're all really excited about that. And then we had our inaugural meeting. There is a Neuroscience of Psychedelics Fellowship that's being funded by Atai. It's going to be run by MGH for postdoctoral fellows and physicians interested in essentially biological research in psychedelics. So that's going to fund a couple of fellows every year for a number of years. And we sort of had the first meeting to kind of start talking about enrollment and what that's going to look like. So that's exciting. The things that I'm more directly involved in and really fired up about, number one, I'm working with Roxy Sholivar and Mike Alpert and MAPS to create a Harvard psychiatry specific MAPS training for psychiatry residents and possibly a few junior faculty, and this will be subsidized. So MAPS is really interested in making this happen. And so is the program directorship of my psychiatry residency training program at Mass General and the departmental leadership. So we're talking with the heads of psychiatry at MGH, trying to figure out creative ways to subsidize the residents and actually fund this. So some really interesting stuff is going to happen, but it's planned for April 2023. So we have about a year to put this together. The other project, and related to that, there's going to be another conference. So November 4th and 5th, last year we put on a one-year conference. It was a big success. We thought we could get 100 people to break even. So that was what we shot for. We got 400. Now we're going to do a 2-day thing. I think, although we haven't gotten the signature yet, but I think Robin Carhart-Harris is going to come and headline it. It's going to be in person at the Westin Hotel. So stay tuned for more details on that. The other thing is a project that's just sort of been in the early planning stages, but I want to mention here because I think it's a really cool one, is I've been working with one of the child or pediatric gastroenterology fellows on creating a pilot study of using PAT, psilocybin-assisted therapy, for disorders of gut-brain interaction, sort of the current umbrella term for sort of functional abdominal pain, sort of conditions that are non-physiological and sort of resistant to treatment. And this is going to be in transitional age youth, which means age 18 to 26. So sort of the age at which this condition kind of really starts to kind of medicalize these patients. We hope to sort of establish that we can do this feasibly and kind of treat this condition early on, because this is a patient population that's sort of very high utilizers of clinics, emergency rooms, lots of medications, and not really great outcomes. So the gastroenterology departments, both adult, would be in partnership with both the PDGI and adult GI at MGH, and they're incredibly excited about this. They'll sort of match any of the funds that we can raise for this project. So we're sort of trying to raise some funding for this. This is going to be about a $75,000 study, and they've said if we can raise half of that, they will fund the other half. So I'm going to put just the information on that in the chat. With the fellow's name is Erin Monty, and she is awesome. She's put a little link for this, but I'd be happy to sort of share any more details on that. I think those are kind of the big things. There may be some sort of other simmering things going on around MGH, but those are the biggies. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks, guys.
That's a lot. That's fabulous, Franklin. I forgot to mention that Franklin was also one of the original members. So it's great to have you here with us, and thank you for all you're doing. It's been amazing to watch all of this blossoming. So it's great. Thank you. Thank you. Next, I'd like to call on Elizabeth Ames, who's also been a longtime BPRG member, whose latest project is getting a MAPS site up and running in Kyiv in the Ukraine. And she was literally ready to go the day that the US citizens were advised to leave Kyiv. So she has an update on where they stand. It's amazing that she's been able to continue this work despite the war. And we all know with the war going on, people there are going to need it even more. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for what you're doing and for the update you're going to give us.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I give you greetings from our 65 members in Kiev, or in Ukraine, of UPRA, which is the Ukrainian Psychedelic Research Association. Right now, they asked specifically that I thank you for your support. Psychologically, it means everything to them to know that the world is watching and caring what happens. Before I tell you about what we're doing and how we're having to pivot in the current context of the war, let me just say I am convinced that Ukraine will survive. It will survive as an independent entity, but the cost is going to be catastrophic. And I think what we're going to be seeing and hopefully addressing is a level of psychological, institutional, and infrastructure devastation that's equivalent to what the country suffered after World War II. So let me just give you a piece of where we were and where we're going. Where we were was last May, I teamed up with the co-founder to focus on taking psychedelic therapy for trauma mitigation above ground and legal in Ukraine. We were focusing on 3 areas. One was clinical trials in 3 years as a piece of legalization. The second was we were focusing on the military veterans issues because veterans are national heroes and have been since the 2014 war began. And the third piece of it was getting the science out because that's completely unknown there. So at that point, no one really knew where Ukraine was. And it was going to be hard to get world attention on it. So we had almost a stealth strategy where we were building community, we were volunteer based, and we were planning on fundraising on a project by project basis in those 3 areas I sketched out. Now, of course, everything has changed. And what we're going to be facing is a traumatized population of 42 million people. So what I'm doing now is starting a US nonprofit as a fundraising and control entity on financial resources that as soon as the war is over, we can deploy. The second thing is we have to change our strategy from individual therapeutic models to groups, because scaling and access is going to be everything. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. We're getting very strong initial positive readings on people's willingness to contribute to this effort in Ukraine. I'm going to put my email in the chat group, and particularly if you can help us with fundraising or awareness building, that trauma and the preservation of human capital is going to be critical to rebuilding the country. I'd really appreciate it. So thank you. And thank you for all the support of this incredible community.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's beautiful work you're doing. And we're happy to be supporting you. So thank you, thank you. Keep us posted, and I hope that we can help you. So beautiful. Thank you. So is James Davis here? I don't think I've seen him in the list. No, okay. So next I'd like to call on Sherry Reyes, who's our wonderful executive director, our sort of Wizard of Oz, who, if you don't know her, you should know her. She makes this all happen. Sherry also works very closely with the people at California Institute of Integral Study for the certificate program to be a psychedelic therapist and researcher. And she's going to give us an update on the upcoming CPTR cohorts that will be starting next month. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you. And so this year's CPTR program is again in Boston and San Francisco. And the orientation session for both was a couple weeks ago, I think on March 6th. And we've started with 96 trainees in the Boston cohort this year and 158 trainees in the San Francisco cohort this year. And there's also an online only cohort that has 75 trainees. These numbers might change a little bit because some people are making last minute decisions. In Boston, because of all of your guys' support with the scholarship fund we created for BPRG, we were able to give 22 partial scholarships to students who are BIPOC, LGBTQI, or are serving underserved communities. The San Francisco cohort in person will launch or kick off on April 7th. So it's coming up soon. And then the Boston cohort is starting at the end of the month, end of April, I mean. And we're super excited to see the program grow and expand. And we are also in a lot of discussions to see if we may add Chicago next year as kind of like a Midwest to expand the reach of the CPTR program. And I guess the last update, which Anne touched on before, which is this year is exciting because there's been an allowance now for a new group of trainees, which is for attorneys. So that's great as well. Yeah, I think that's it.
Great. Well, thank you, Sherry. And it's fun to think even more BPRG members are going to be trained. We have such a large crossover between that CPTR and BPRG. It's very exciting. So I think that's it. Does anyone want to spontaneously give us an update about anything? This was a very, very rich and diverse group of updates. I'm really appreciative, and it makes me appreciate this community and with so much, which has so much depth. So I think.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Sorry, I think there's some background landscaping. Hope that's not coming through. But I had a friend reach out to me who was looking to have some psychedelic art included in a gallery opening that will be happening in May. And if I'm not really familiar with any psychedelic specific artists in the Boston area, but if anyone knows anyone local, I will drop my email in the chat and try and connect you to.
That's fun. Great. Thank you, Andrew. Any more spontaneous updates? All right. So we'll take a little break now. Raquel Bennett who's our featured speaker, I think you know, is supposed to come on around 10 of, we hope, so that we can start right away at 2, but we may get started a little bit earlier since we're done with this earlier. So if you could all come back, aim to be back by 10 of, certainly we'll aim to start at 5 of, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.